Yes.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to DraftKings Tour Junkies After Dark. This is going to be a great episode. It's the American Express. Yeah. Bleh.
The American Express Championship?
Nope.
No. The American Express Open?
Nope.
The American Express Invitational?
A big bottle of nope.
The American Express Challenge?
No.
The American Express?
It's just the American Express. What if it were just the Visa? The Visa.
The Visa. Well, we're off to a good start. I've got my rosé.
Is your light on, by the way? You're dark as...
I need to change. I need to lighten it up. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, God. It's the Tour Junkies After Dark. I am drinking vodka that shall not be named, and it's a good time. We just finished recording the podcast. It was a good one. I'm David Barnett of the Tour Junkies. This young man now in the light is Pat Perry, who goes from vodka to wine right before every Tour Junkies After Dark. So how's it going, Pat?
It's going well. I'm feeling like a lucky dog tonight.
Yikes.
So
all right.
We'll see what happens.
We're here to talk about the American Express 2020, which is actually a name of a PGA Tour event that, is an interesting event. We're going to talk a lot of strategy tonight, okay? Because this tournament is decided on 3 different golf courses, okay? 3 different golf courses.
We hate, and you'll hear that anytime that happens.
Yeah, it is
what we have to deal. We have to deal with it. It is what it is.
Yeah, we got to be resilient. You know what I mean? It's on 3 different golf courses. We're going to talk a lot of strategy. We're going to talk about a little bit of disagreement, but mainly strategy for you tonight, so that you can set your lineups on DraftKings with confidence. You know what I mean? And then we're going to talk a little bit of DraftKings sportsbook picks that tickle our fancy. So, Pat, before we get into a lot of strategy here, let's talk about the golf courses. Let's talk about this event and what is different from most weeks.
Yeah, so I'll make this really quick because we have 3 courses, so I could get long-winded. But here's the deal. We got 156 players. This is a full field event. They are going to make the cut, T65 and ties, after Saturday's round. So everybody's going to get at least 3 rounds in this tournament, and then they will play the 4th and final round at the TPC Stadium course. So they'll get 2 rounds on that course, which is typically the toughest course out there. But look, here's the deal. You got La Quinta Country Club. You got the Nicklaus course and the Stadium course that I mentioned. They're all playing par 72s, just around 7,100 yards. They all got 4 par 5s with several reachable par 5s. So I think par 5 scoring is definitely going to be important this week. You got Bermuda grass greens. So that's really the key as far as the courses themselves. I mean, there's some subtle differences here and there. I mentioned the Stadium course is definitely the most difficult one, which is the one they're going to finish on. But they got 12 holes, 12 par 5s they're going to get guaranteed. That's where you got to score this week. You got to score on those par 5s. You got to make birdies. You got to make some eagles. We've seen scoring just ridiculous this week. I mean, I think last year was 20 under. We've seen anywhere
26.
So anywhere from 20 to 26 under at this tournament. I think that's something you want to know. Another stat that I'll throw out there is 10 of the last 11 winners at this tournament have played in Hawaii leading up to this event. So that is something important to look at. Now that may not be the only thing, but just something to think about going into this tournament. But again, we're looking at scoring this week. Any player can win. I mean, you look at the last 5 champs. Adam Long came out of nowhere. You had John
Rahm. 300 to 1, by the way.
You had John Rahm, Hudson Swafford, Jason Duffner, Bill Haas has won here twice. I mean, any type player can win on this course. So you really can't just say, I'm going to go all bombers or I'm going to go, your short knockers or whatever it is. I mean, it is it's really a crapshoot when it comes to the type of player that can win here. So I'm looking at scores, and I think it really brings into, recent form is definitely key. Those guys are in good form going into this tournament. So there you go. That's my quick rundown. I don't know what you got there, but.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously hit the highlights. Again, it is a Bermuda golf course, but we should mention that the greens are overseeded with rye.
Yes. Could mean something. I don't know exactly what. But.
Well, it may mean that they don't quite putt like your traditional Bermuda, but here's it's a pro-am. So that means that you've got – so in each group, you're going to have 2 pros and 2 amateurs. You're going to have foursomes going out, which means that these are going to be slow rounds, which means that these players are going to have to be patient. There is something to playing in a pro-am format. You need a certain mentality as a PGA Tour to be able to suffer through the pro-am BS that is what it is. So there's something to that. There's something to also the setup. Like, they're not going to put the pins in super difficult places. We've got word from a PGA Tour caddy of 20-plus years whose player has also won this event before. And this caddy says, listen, this is a pro-am event. The rough is not that bad. In the fairways, it's not that bad. Around the greens, that this place, favors someone in good form and who scores a lot. And, that's something you mentioned. I think form is the most key. You mentioned the 10 of 11 players having played at least one Hawaiian event in weeks prior. It's really hard if you haven't played tournament golf in, since the RSM. It's really hard to come to this event and shoot a 24 under, or a 26 under like Adam Long just last year. Patrick Reed won this event in 2014 at 28 under. It's really hard if you're not in form or if you're shaking the rust off. If this is your first event back, it's hard to come out and shoot 28 under and do that. But you're right. You do have to take advantage of the par fives for sure. And you got to be able to go low. So that's definitely a thing. If you're playing showdowns on DraftKings, you want to play guys on the La Quinta or the Nicholas course. La Quinta and Nicholas both tend to be the easier golf courses. All 3 of these courses are easy, but those 2 year after year tend to be the easiest. So you're going to want to look out for that. If you're betting on first-round leaders, you're going to want to look at La Quinta or the Nicholas course, or as Pat used to call it in the early days of the Tour Junkies podcast, the
La Quinta. La Quinta.
The La Quinta course. Yeah. So, we wanted to spend a little time on the strategy this week because I think that is a thing. The weather looks pretty good for now, pretty evened out, but come Wednesday night, you're going to want to look at that and see who, may have the weather draw or the weather advantage here. But, I definitely think there's something to the strategy here, but all in all, you want players who are going to score and going to be aggressive. That is going to be really, really important. You got to make birdies. You got to make eagles. So that's key. But it's going to be an easier setup. You got amateurs. So there you go.
Yeah.
Pat, anything else?
When you go to the PGA Tour media website, they actually print out. They give you all the scorecards from like the amateurs to the pros. Some of the amateurs are playing this course at like 5,800 yards, which is crazy. I would love to play that. I like 5,800 yards. I'm all about that. So, but that just speaks to the point that I think that you're right. I mean, they're definitely going to be in some easy pin positions and things like that, except for Sunday when they get rid of all the amateurs and they go to, the real deal on the stadium course. So
our caddy friend, we said, hey, if you had to pick between form, course history, and course fit, how would you weight each of those on a 100% scale? He said form would be 70% of the weighting, which is pretty significant. So form is a big deal, which we mentioned. So let's get into it. We had an interesting podcast tonight, Pat. I think we're actually more on the same page than we.
A lot of agreement, even down below in the 6K range. We had some Matt Naismith. I'll mention real quick, was a guy we've never mentioned on the podcast before. Either one of us have even spoken those words. Never. Matt Naismith, and we both liked him. So I just got to throw that out there for this show because I think that needs to be.
No, I like.
I mean, it's a monumental moment. So
yeah, it's a big deal. Which means he'll probably trunk slam on Saturday. But, that's the thing. Like, you're guaranteed 3 rounds from everybody. So, now here's the thing, though. This field is, to me, it's kind of weak. Like, we look at the top range, the 9K or the 10. Let's look at just the 10K and above. You could totally make a lineup fading the 10K and above. Now, I do kind of like Sung J M out of that 10K range and above, but there's no way I'm paying up for 11.5 for Ricky Fowler. Even last week you had Justin Thomas at 12,000 coming off a win and great record at Wiley, and I didn't want to pay 12,000 for him. I mean, with an event like this where Adam Long won last year at like 300 to 1, Hudson Swafford won, you mentioned, Brian Gay has won this tournament. Anybody can win here because it's a go low event. On the PGA Tour, when you get a birdie fest like this, that means literally anybody can get hot for just 1 week and win. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to pay up for those guys. So the strategy is going to be interesting. In terms of disagreements, there was one guy that you mentioned that I guess I just really disagreed with, and that is justifying paying $9,300 for Cameron Champ. Now, Cameron Champ is now a 2-time winner on the PGA Tour. I get that. He has not played this event before. But justify to me the $9,300 spend on Cameron Champ.
Well, here's the deal. Look, and he was – when I mentioned him, we talk about on the show, we give our GPP plays and we try to hone in on certain guys instead of just naming a bunch of players and then we hope a hit and whatever else. So we make ourselves like take these guys and we give us a limit, and we only have 3 tournament plays in this range. And for me, I think that Cam Champ last year I was not a big fan of all the hype going into the year. He had a win in the fall last year, and everybody was all in love with Cam Champ. And he was one of the guys, it's well documented. If you go back, I said I didn't think he was going to have as great of a year as everybody thought he was going to have, and he didn't. But he came back last year in the fall and won an event, and I just think that this is a perfect course for him, especially when it comes to par 5s. He's top 11 in the field in par 5 scoring. If you look, and now that's just over the last 24 rounds. But if you go over 100 rounds, so let's go back 100 rounds, he's top 10 in the field in par 5 scoring. So he checks the box there. So he's a guy that we talk about taking advantage on these par 5s. He's obviously shown that he can do that. And of the putting surfaces out there, you got bent grass, POA, whatever else you want to talk about. That's his best surface over time is Bermuda grass greens. So I think that, Cam Champ at 9,300, I know that's kind of a high price for him, but obviously he's great off the tee. He's number 1 in the field in strokes gained off the tee. He's going to take advantage of these par 5s. And these par 5s are not very long. They are not very – now, some of them are difficult. They're not – even though they're not very long, they may be difficult to hit in 2 and do whatever. But I still think he's going to be able to take advantage with his length and everything else. And his form has been, very good. So I am all in on some Cam Champ at 9,300. And then let's just look at ownership. I mean, he's really been very low owned the last few weeks. Now, he was 14% owned at the Tournament Champions, but there was only 30 people in the field. So that doesn't matter. But let's go back to some full field events. He was, at the OHL Classic, he was 6.6% owned. At the Houston Open, he was 4% owned. Shriners, 5.7% owned. Safeway, 4.2% owned. So, I mean, he's a low-owned guy that I think you're going to get, even though at that price range, people are maybe going to be off of him a little bit because they don't want to pay $9,300 for Cam Champ. But, look, I love him this week. I think everything points to a great week for him. I think he's gonna do so much better than his value this week and score you some points in DraftKings. So I do like some Cam Champ. I'm all about it. I feel like I just talked forever about Cam Champ, more so than I've ever talked in my entire life.
Yeah, I mean, it's overkill on Cam Champ. I mean, I guess I disagree, obviously. It's tough for me to pay $9,300 for Cam Champ, considering the volatility. If he were $8,700, maybe that's a little different. But for me, it has a lot to do with the value here for Cam Champ. He gains all of his strokes off the tee. And I just think these are golf courses that may take driver out of his hand. Length is just not near the advantage that it typically is week to week on the PGA Tour. So that's my reason for fading Cam Champ. But that's really, I mean, all things considered, I don't disagree with you on near the amount of players as typically. So Cam Champ is it.
As far as the show is concerned, we had a lot of agreement, and we had some
any bones to pick with me?
I look back, and I typically write notes while we're doing the show, and I don't really have any bones. The only bone I will say is Daniel Berger. Berger? Like, I can't figure out why you want to play Daniel Berger. I mean, look, I know he's probably going to be low owned and whatever else, but that guy just is not, to me, winning me any money. He is not going to win me money.
Well, I mean, so we talked about how people who played in Hawaii have won this event 10 out of the last 11 years. Okay.
Which he did play in Hawaii.
So he played in Hawaii last week. He finished 38th, I believe. Let's see.
Just shocking
38
to me. I thought he was going to miss.
He is a proven PGA Tour winner who needs help this year. He's motivated. I think that's one reason why he's here. He needs some help. He played this event last season, finished 19th last season. He's checks a box in putting in Bermuda, checks a box in par 5 scoring. He's aggressive. $7,500. And I mean, if you look at last week's performance, he did everything very well at the Sony. Gained more than 5 strokes tee to green at the Sony. He lost nearly 3 putting, which is kind of typical for Daniel Berger. Like, that's kind of typical. And he finished 38th. So, he was 10% owned. Like, I just don't think a lot of people are going to play Daniel Berger. But if you're talking about tournament upside at an event where scoring is key, that's a guy that checks that box. So,
okay, I'm okay with it.
He's got a hot girlfriend and a cool boat.
He does. He has a fantastic boat. If you've ever seen it on Instagram.
All right, you want to get into some DK Sportsbook picks here?
Yeah, let's get into some picks here.
DK Sportsbook, I like a couple of guys here. I'm going to start with the shorter odds. JT Poston is where I'm going to start my card at 45-1. Now, JT Poston missed the cut just this past week, but he missed it, kind of barely. And honestly, it was kind of a crap show. Like, the greens were junk. He just didn't have the putts drop. He did play here last year, finished tied for 7th last year. Before just this past week, he was on such a heater. Love JT Poston, 45-1. Little birdie that may have some intel may or may not have told us that JT Poston should have a good week this week. So heads up there. And then I'm going to get into some long shots, man. Well, I mean, so I'm going to go Harris English, who you mentioned on the podcast. He's at 70-1. He's playing on a medical exemption, temporary status. He needs to play well right now. Great record here. I don't think he's missed a cut in his last 7 attempts here at this golf course. So I think Harris English is interesting at 70-1. Then I'm going with Henrik Norlander at 100-1, who we talked about last week, finished 9th at the Sony. Great ball striker. 100-1 is an interesting number. And then Siwoo Kim is 175-1. Now, Siwoo Kim is as volatile as they get, but he won the Players Championship.
Yeah, if you're going to bet Siwoo Kim, take some antacid before you you put that bet in, because you're either gonna he's either gonna be great or just he's gonna
he's either gonna win or he's gonna miss a cut by $1 million. But at 175-1, this is a Pete Dye design. These are Pete Dye design course. A couple of them are Pete Dye design courses. He won the Players Championship.
R.I.P. Pete Dye.
R.I.P. Pete. 175-1 is a big number for Siwoo. I think that's interesting. And finally, I'm going to go with a top 5 bet on a local boy from just right down the street from where you and I grew up, Pat, in North Augusta, South Carolina, which is about 15 minutes from the Augusta National. Matt Naismith at 28-1 for a top 5. Now, Matt Naismith is a Korn Ferry graduate. You mentioned him on the podcast. I like him as well. Korn Ferry grad who's been trending up, big-time hitter, big-time scorer, and 28-1 for a top 5 is somewhat interesting to me on DraftKings as well.
Okay. Wow. All right. So I'll throw out a couple here. I'll go a little shorter than you on the odds. I think Charles Howell at 28-1 is definitely worth looking at. Look, Charles Howell is just the West Coast guy. I mean, we talked about last week at the Sony Open. He is literally the leading money winner at that tournament, even though he has not won. But we've seen him win. You know, he won on tour last year, and I love some Charles Howell. 28-1, I'm okay with that. You like Scotty Scheffler, right? Didn't you like him on the podcast? Yeah, I like him at 35-1. I think that's a pretty good bet for him. Another guy, Jason Kokrak, was a guy that I liked on as far as a DraftKings pick. I like him at 45-1. I will also go with some Scott Harrington at 125-1. He's a cheap 6K guy on DraftKings, has made 6 straight cuts on tour, has done very well. He had a second-place finish back at the Houston Open. So I do like some Scott Harrington as well at 125-1. Another guy I would look at is Sam Ryder is 28-1 actually for a top 5 finish. And Sam Ryder had a good week last week. I mean, he was he was T28 last week. So I think a top 25 for Sam Ryder at 28-1 is pretty good numbers. So I like that as well. So there you go. That is my did you have something to say there?
No, so we got some outrights. We got a couple top 5s. I like it.
Yeah. So there you go.
Boom. Thanks for checking in to Tour Junkies After Dark. We appreciate it. If you would, give the video a thumbs up, maybe a subscribe, comment that you like the videos. That would help us out. We would appreciate it. Go check out our YouTube channel where our podcast is live. You can watch that take shape. It was quite interesting this week. We had a good time. And, we'll be back next week for the Farmers Insurance from Torrey Pines. Tiger is back next week, Pat. I'm excited about that.
Woo! Yes.
All right.
Boom.
May your screens be green. Have a great week. Thanks for watching. See ya.